Hello, this is John Anderson.
And I'm Trevor Rabin.
We're here to talk about Talk.
That's the latest album in the Yes catalog. Welcome to part one of Media America Radio's presentation of Yes, up close.
The Calling arrives from Talk, the latest issue from Yes. Here are the main songwriting collaborators on the album, John Anderson and Trevor Rabin.
The idea of making this album was generally for me and Trevor to work together very closely in the inception of the project. And that's basically what we did. We collaborated on the songs in the initial first couple of weeks down in San Clemente, just by the beach, away from the sort of city life and studio work. You know, just the idea of putting together music that would sustain a whole album and in fact sustain a show. So
yeah, and the exciting thing was, as John said, for the first time we worked closely together. And obviously we'd been working together for years previously on 901 to 5 and Big Generator and Parts of Union and obviously endless amounts of exciting shows that we did together. But this was really a new collaboration for the both of us. It was somehow there was a new spark there, and we kind of found how to work together in a really exciting way, and I think that led to a very much more inspired record than we've done for a while.
I Am Waiting from Talk.
Hi, I'm Trevor Rabin. We'll be back with more music on Yes Up Close in just a moment.
We're back up close with Yes. Yes originally consisted of singer John Anderson, guitarist Peter Banks, Tony Kaye on keys, bassist Chris Squire, and drummer Bill Bruford. They all came together in London in 1968. Here's Tony Kaye.
I guess how it really started was John met Chris, and then Chris knew me, and we both frequented the same bar on Wardour Street, you know. So the concept was born in the Shas Club, I think, on Wardour Street.
Then followed two big breaks. The first was due to this guy. Here's Chris Squire.
We were living in Kensington, where this club called Blazes was, and of course Sly had already started his tradition of not turning up, but for some reason or other they were convinced he was coming that night. No, he didn't. And so the club manager completely freaked, but you know, a friend of ours who was at the club, Sly, said, well, the only thing I know you can do is there's this band living in the next street, and I know they've got their van with all their equipment in. Maybe you should put them on. So that, yeah, we went down and played to this packed club, and we were pretty good that night, and people dug it, and the guy who managed the club was so sort of relieved, I think, that he decided to manage us. Being that club a host guy that knew so many people and was owed a favour here and there by lots of people in the music business, as soon as he started managing us, we almost became a resident support act at the Royal Albert Hall. In the course of like 2 months, we played like about 5 shows at the Royal Albert Hall, supporting like the Cream's farewell concert and Janis Joplin and various other, a couple of charity things. It almost became like we were the resident support band of the place where we never thought we'd ever be.
Yours is No Disgrace from the Yes album. The band discovers with their follow-up album that success can be a very fragile situation. Next on part 1 of Yes, Up Close. Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Welcome back to part 1 of Yes, Up Close. Let's continue with John Anderson's reflections on a career with one of rock's most innovative bands.
Every time we go on tour or every time we make an album, there's an element of pain and a little bit of suffering that goes.
Back to part 1 of Yes, Up Close. Let's continue with John Anderson's reflections on a career with one of rock's most innovative bands.
Every time we go on tour or every time we make an album, there's an element of pain and a little bit of suffering that goes through that. I don't know why it does, but I know that it's just one of those things. You try to start an album and you know clearly what you're going to do, but all of a sudden the music takes hold of you and whips you around the room and throws you around both, psychologically and physically and musically, until at the end you're drained, but thank goodness you've finished the album. And I think the same happens with a tour, that you go into the tour thinking this is going to be a piece of cake, this is going to be fun, and then within a week you're panicking because the show isn't the way you thought it should be. So eventually within a 2-week, 3-week period the show will become great, and then we'll be able to survive on tour for a year. But there's always that feeling in the back of your mind, maybe this isn't the tour we're going to finish. I don't know why, but there's something inside that says no, Yes is bigger than all of you, so get on with it,
I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way. I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way. Take a straight and stronger course to the corner of spot, I'm on my way. I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way.
I've seen all good people, including your move and all good people from the Yes album. Here's Chris Squire.
Obviously, there was a look to the sound of the band that was different from normal, okay, which, you always have to have in order to sort of penetrate any kind of existing market or whatever, provided you get that far. And of course, because we were a very solid playing band, we did manage to break through. And but the main reason that the Yes album was very successful was because it was a very, very warm album. And it had kind of suggestions of the beginning of high tech, as in Yours Is No Disgrace, where we were using, one of the very first Moog synthesizers, the big old thing with all the wires and stuff, so there was a high tech element, but that wasn't it really either. It was the fact that the whole album had a very warm sort of approach to it, and it sort of stood us in very good stead to carry on.
long-distance runaround from the Fragile album, which peaked at number 4 in 1972. We'll take a short break right here and return before you know it with more of Yes Up Close. Yes Up Close is back. If necessity is the mother of invention, then happy accident must be the father. Yes, bassist Chris Squire found that out early in the band's career.
We've been working on our second album in our Vision Studios with Eddie Offord engineering. The first album he'd engineered with us, and we had this producer, Tony Colton. And it was in those days when it was very hip to listen to things on headphones, okay? So Tony Colton, the producer, and this is the Time in the Word album I'm talking about, he had this idea that, well, when we come to the mix, I'm going to do the whole thing on cans. Now, the way the whole board was set up there, the cans were like kind of like these real kind of things, you know, like that, and so there we are sitting there, you know, with the stuff like, you know, No Experience Necessary and various other things, and he's got the cans on and he's waving to Eddie Offord and it's right, more bass, okay, because there's no bass on these cans at all, and Eddie Offord's kind of going, oh, okay, well, he's the producer. Anyway, what happened is that, you know, we ended up with that second album with real loud bass, and people kind of dug it. And then when Eddie Offord, you know, actually became the co-producer on the Yes album, which was the following album, he kind of actually sort of like pushed that same motivation, you know, of keeping the bass loud. And then by the time we did Roundabout, you know, and you know, the bass was always mixed very loud on albums, and that's really how I became famous.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer, and this is Yes vocalist John Anderson.
It's a very complex band that's made up of 5 very individual people, and musically we're still fighting. We're in there fighting. We're juggling with music, and we're not just laying back and playing our hits. We just keep trying to push the boundaries musically, and there's not too many of us left in this sort of realm of musicians, you know, and we're just honouring our musical growth, I suppose, because we're still in the business and we're still able to tour and people are still willing to come and see us. So in some ways we're all developing all the time.
What Yes have developed into recently is their latest album, Talk. Last time on part 1 of Yes Up Close, we talked about Talk and played music from Talk. And now on part 2 of this Yes trilogy, let's move closer to the edge and continue the story of Yes's musical development.
Welcome, this is our home for another week. I'm Trevor Rabin.
And I'm John Anderson. You're listening to the Media America Radio Network and part 2 of Yes Up Close.
paint the picture of time behind the face of me. And you and I reach over the sun for the river. And you and I glide clearer towards the movement. And you and I gold over valleys of endless sea. And you and I glide crossing the shapes of the morning. And you and I reach over the sun for the river. And you and I glide clearer towards the movement. And you and I gold over valleys of endless sea.
And You and I from Close to the Edge. Following its release in 1972, drummer Bill Bruford decided to move on.
Well, I was a young guy, you know, I wanted to play with somebody else. I didn't know you were supposed to stay and play with 4 musicians your whole life. I mean, that seemed crazy to me. So I wanted to go and find out how other people made music.
Bill was replaced by Alan White.
They were actually just finished Close to the Edge, the album. And I was touring in Europe with Joe Cocker. And we were just finishing the last week of the tour, and I got a call from a friend of mine, Tony Dimitriadis, who now is the manager of the band, saying that, yes, would like me to join them. And luckily it was the last week of the tour, so I flew back to England, and I had it was 3 days actually to learn the whole repertoire. And then I was playing in Dallas, Texas, first gig.
2 albums later, the musical chairs resumed in earnest when keyboardist Rick Wakeman left. He was replaced by Patrick Moraz, who in turn was replaced by Rick Wakeman. Rick returned just in time to lend his chops to 1977's Going for the One. Going for the One from the album of the same name. Yes falters, then finds a new sound, direction, and guitarist.
I'm Trevor Rabin.
Next on Up Close. Part 2 of Yes Up Close continues with John Anderson.
The mid-70s period, we really reached out, and we came up against this very sort of business-like brick wall where we were trying to escape the rigidity of making music for radio and realizing that if you don't make music for radio, people won't really come and see you. That was a sort of jolt, because we felt very free around Close to the Edge and Topographic Oceans, and realized a year or 2 later that we were losing contact with the audience because they were so used to maybe easier listening music. So we had to actually break up for a while. Well, I had to leave, and I know that Chris and Alan felt uncomfortable about being told we've got to make hit singles to survive. And it was a very difficult period until Trevor came along, who was this young, fresh guy who could write songs that were real radio.
Trevor is guitarist Trevor Rabin.
He just wasn't a pop songwriter. He has great talent. So he actually taught us a little bit of a lesson. You know, you can make sort of radio and commercial songs, and at the same time you can be esoteric and try strange ideas and musical variations, you know. We were sort of bullheaded about the whole business. We wanted to do it our way, and I think that in reflection it wasn't a bad time, but it was a big lesson to be learned.
It can happen to you. It happen to me. It can happen to everyone eventually. It's a constant fight, a constant fight. You pushing the needle to the red. Go black, go white. Who knows who's right? You can always happen to you. It can happen. You can cheat. It can happen to everyone eventually. It's happen to say. It can happen. It can happen. As it happens, it happens in every way. You can feed the soul apart. You can touch your life. You can bring your soul alive. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to everyone eventually.
It Can Happen from 1983's 90125. Here's Trevor Rabin.
I wasn't asked to join Yes. Chris had called me and said, "Do you want to get a band together?" And I was going to singer, songwriter, guitar player, and Chris and Alan drums and bass, and we were going to work together. And then we got Tony Kaye involved, and we liked the way it was going. We called the band Cinema. It's cutting a long story short. We called the band Cinema, and near the end of recording 90125, Chris saw John somewhere and played him some of the stuff. John loved it and said, "Oh, that sounds great." And Chris said, "Well, you know, come down and have a listen to the studio." And we invited him to sing on a track or two. We thought it sounded great. I thought it was fantastic. I think John's a great singer. And he sounded so good on the songs. I said, let's ask him to join the band, you know. So we did, and that's how it became Yes.
I can feel no sense of measure, no illusions as we take refuge in illusions as we take refuge in man's pleasure, breaking down the dreams we made real. One down, one to go. Another town with one more show. One down, one to go. Another town and one more show.
From 90125, that was Leave It.
Hello, I'm John Anderson. Hang on to your seats. Yes, up close. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer, and you're back up close with Yes. On 12/3/83, 90125 debuted and hit number 5.
One down, one to go. Another town with one more show. One down, one to go. Another town and one more show.
From 90125, that was Leave It.
Hello, I'm John Anderson. Hang on to your seats. Yes, up close. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer, and you're back up close with Yes. On 12/3/83, 90125 debuted and hit number 5. Trevor Rabin.
It was good not to be confined by whatever restrictions the name Yes might conjure up, although it's a pretty broad kind of, you know, the parameters are pretty broad, but it was, you know, I wasn't thinking, oh, well, I've got to fall into this format because it is the band. And So we did the album and then called it Yes, because it sounded with John's voice and the people in the band, it sounded like Yes, even though most of the material was material I had written before meeting the guys, and it wasn't very Yes. And some people have questioned that, saying, well, it's not as authentic as what Yes used to be. But if you go through from one Yes album to another, they were pretty radically different, and I think in that sense we kept up the tradition.
Move yourself. You always live your life, never thinking of the future. Prove yourself. You are the move you make. Take your chances, win or loser. See yourself. You are the steps you take.
Owner of a Lonely Heart, Yes's first ever #1 song. Here's bassist Honest Abe, also known as Chris Squire.
It's that old maxim, isn't it? You can fool the public, some of the time, all of them. So some all, but you can't. You actually have to keep providing a vital sort of entertainment source with kind of the aspect of genuine sort of like progress, to keep people interested, because there's plenty of other people who are doing that stuff, and if you fall behind, you fall behind.
Keyboardist Tony Kaye.
It's so different now. We're playing to 10, 20,000 people that consist of young kids listening to our music for the first time, and who may be bewildered or amazed or delighted at listening to Heart of the Sunrise and You and I, because it could be confusing to someone who's been listening to Owner of a Lonely Heart and Big Generator. So there's a big mixture, and it's great.
never be the same. Something you did touch me. There's no one else to blame.
From 90125, that was Changes. We'll crank up the big generator and sway to the rhythm of love when part 2 of Yes Up Close continues. In 1987, 4 years after Yes had rocked the world with 90125, the band fired up Big Generator. Yes's quest for musical changes continued. Here's John Anderson.
If you listen to Shoot High, Aim Low, Big Generator, I'm Running, Finalize, they're all musical chances, you know? And along with that, you have your Rhythm of Love, Almost Like Love, Love Will Find a Way, and Holy Lambs, which are sort of just fun ideas. So it's at the moment it's half and half, which is very much like Fragile. And then we moved into Close to the Edge and more esoterical ideas. It's like music without barriers, not quite sure where you're going, so you let the music organically take you somewhere. Again, it's an experience, isn't it? So every Yes album has been totally different. You cannot put one together with each other and say that is following a course. It just doesn't work that way, because Yes, it's just a bit different, I suppose.
Rhythm of Love from Big Generator.
I'm just happy that I'm still making music, and I'm discovering things all the time about my career. So I'm very, very happy about that. And working with the musicians of Yes is like a school, and you go through a lot of emotion, and you find out a lot about yourself.
Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Once again, we'll spend this up-close hour with the members of Yes. Let's start out with lead singer John Anderson's reflections on the business that has been his life.
You never thought of it as a job. You always thought that you're in the music business. Thankfully, you're in some kind of business. And just survive and keep going and learn and practice and learn and practice and learn and practice. And then, gosh, you can travel the world. And that was really the opener, the eye-opener for me, was the fact that we could travel the world. And now, Yes, developed and everything. And so as time has gone along, it's always a question of meeting new challenges.
Welcome to the Media America Radio Network and part 3 of Yes, Up Close. Love Will Find a Way from 1987's Big Generator. The next project from vocalist John Anderson combined the talents of 80% of the classic Yes lineup. Of course, without the bass playing of Chris Squire, the band could not be called Yes. So, they opted for the law firm-like name of Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. That would be John Anderson, drummer Bill Bruford, with Rick Wakeman and Steve Howe on keyboards and guitars. Here's Rick on his initial reaction to the reunion.
I said, what worries me slightly is that there's quite a legend that's grown up about what we did together during the Fragile and Close to the Edge days. And it's almost got out of hand. It's grown. I mean, I've heard stories that we played on stages that were bigger than the auditoriums, that we had lighting rigs that encompassed the whole audience. I've heard tales that I was on stage with 100 keyboards. You know, things grow up, which are all harmless. They're all good fun. But, can you live up to what people in their almost imaginations, expect? And the same musically. And I said, I'd love to talk to John first of all. And I said, and then take it from there.
Before long, the talk became a recording session. Here's Bill Bruford.
Brother of Mine I like a lot, actually. I think it's got some great stuff in there. I mean, it's been a long time since you heard a decent polyrhythm on radio, and there's some very strange rhythmic devices in that. I think it's got some great stuff, Brother of Mine, actually. I think it's got a very nice Rick Wakeman solo. It's got a nice sort of low-key groove at the front. Very nice. I like it a lot, that particular cut. I'm very pleased that's a single, the long version of it, because I think it has the essence of what we do very well.
Giving all the love you have, never be afraid to see my life for the first time. So it's there, but you wanted to one special reason. Yes, it's there, but you wanted to want one another. So it's there, but you wanted to one special reason.
Brother of Mine from Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. That reunion becomes Union, next on Part 3 of Yes, Up Close. Welcome back to Up Close and the ultimate Yes configuration. In 1990, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe decided to join forces with Squire, Kay, Rabin, and White. The resulting union featured dual drummers Alan White and Bill Bruford, twin guitars by Steve Howe and Trevor Rabin, and a pair of keyboard players in Rick Wakeman and Tony Kay. Add in the ever-present Chris Squire and John Anderson, and a most interesting Yes project was in the making. Here's Mr. K.
We had written some stuff that actually initially were going to be put on the box set, which was going to be released. And that's really what we were working on. So that element kind of came together, and then I guess someone just suggested, hey, what a good idea maybe if the two bands came together and then ultimately, maybe release an album together. And of course it just slowly came together.
Look around, got no place to stay. Gotta hate this town, depending on the day. You look me up, you look me down. Alright, okay. Well, I got no life, I got no hope. I'm falling in love. Help me through the fight, help me win tonight. I'm calling.
Lift Me Up, from the aptly titled Union. The 1991 album featured work by nearly all of the players who had traveled under the Yes moniker in the 23 years since the band's inception. Here's Alan White.
It's very difficult to, especially with the amount of people we have involved now and the amount of songs that the set list is incredible. We have to pick from. We could be playing for 3 or 4 days. It's a band that goes into detail about every last aspect of music, and if one bar is not right, it will be song is torn apart again and put back together again, and really the fine detail that we do look at, you hear when you hear the finished product, and also here on stage in a live performance.
Chris Squire.
In actual fact, it I suppose it adds a new kind of substance to the music, having the availability of having more players, because especially in the guitar and keyboard department, there's always obviously been quite a considerable amount of overdubbing on our records, and of course when it came to stage, it was a lot of picking and choosing about what parts could be played. But now we have the option of having the parts, all more or less all of the parts played that were on the album, so it's good.
street where we live, there's a place called Desire. There's a stone cold intrusion of madman's fire.
The Union Reunion gave us Saving My Heart. There's more from that album on the way, so why don't you stick around as this Yes Up Close trilogy continues. Hi, I'm Dan Neer. Welcome back to part 3 of Yes Up Close.
Well, he is a pretty unique singer,
Chris Squire on John Anderson.
which is obviously his value. Yeah, he just has he's very individual, and I suppose a lot of people have tried to imitate him. I mean, I know some people are pretty good at it, but you can never obviously quite touch on the real thing, because whenever it comes to imitating anyone, people always think that the way that it's done a different way from how it really is. That's usually the mistake of most imitators, is they don't actually realize that the way something actually comes about is not the way they think it is, or the way a certain style is produced.
I would have waited forever for you to return into my life. I would have waited forever. I would have given you everything I have. I would have waited forever. There's no question at all.
Would have waited forever from Union. With that album and tour completed, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe left while the rest of Yes continued. 1994's Talk found them in a new state of play, discovered while watching TV. Here's John Anderson and Trevor Rabin.
This is CNN syndrome. Everything we're watching and being presented with through the CNN energy idea is really a sort of a very strange view of the world. It's only a small part of what's going on around us, but we're injected with that every day, all the time.
Somebody selects it. There are editors telling us what we should hear.
And think and see. Now we can actually watch war really happening in color. We had it, the Desert War and everything like that. And it's just a state of play. Don't get too hung up. You know, that's the way it is. You know, you can move on consciously from knowing that that is not the most important thing that surrounds. You just got to get into the idea that we are responsible for our own state of play, our own view of the world, our own consciousness, because we are, in a way, our own universe, individually and collectively.
State of Play from the Talk CD.
Hello, I'm John Anderson. Hang on to your seats. Yes, Up Close. We'll be right back.
Yes Up Close returns with John Anderson. The title of the latest Yes album, Talk, has caused a little bit of discussion on its own.
When I was just in Canada now, someone said to me, does it mean more communication? I thought, yeah, that's right. You know, it does mean that we're trying to really communicate more with as many people as we can get to this time round. I think that the album is, as we would say, is radio friendly. It really does spark a new point in terms of what Yes can do musically, is that we can reach out and make good radio songs yet still sustain the character of Yes. You know, most of the tracks are 8-9 minutes long and you edit them down for the radio, but then there's one piece on it which is 15-16 minutes long.
Here's one of the shorter pieces from Talk, Walls. walls from talk. It's been great spending this time with Yes. However, if Up Close hasn't put enough Yes in your life, their upcoming tour just might. John?
We're going to Mexico at the end of May. We're going to be touring America, Canada, June, July, August. I think one of the things we've talked about is keeping the stage simple and the sound amazing. Really going for an exceptional soundboard because we really want the music to come out, musically as sounding correct. And we all agree, Chris and Alan, everybody's agreeing that we should really spend the money that we're getting from the tour on making sure that the sound is great. We can do some visuals, we can do some very interesting lighting, but the sound is really going to be the important thing.